KoitCast.
Today's guest is a psychic medium, experiencer, energy healer, and spiritual artist. For over 20 years, she has helped hundreds of people through readings, meditation, and spiritual development. Please give a massive Koit welcome to Laurie Tobin-Raymond. Hi, Laurie. Welcome to KoitCast.
Hi, how are you doing?
We are super lush. Well, I don't know why I'm speaking for both of us, but I'm super lush today. How are you?
I never say lush, but I'm going to say it today. I'm super lush.
Excellent.
'Cause
Well played.
I like that.
You get 6 points already for joining in. Well done, you. Let's start with who are you, where you're from, etc.
Where I'm from, right, presently I'm from Pennsylvania, but I originally from New England, small town in New Hampshire, actually is where I grew up and been there most of my life. Um, and who I am is, well, actually, you could say who I am is a tricky question, right? So who I am is a divine spark of the universe, here to make manifest, right? And here to remind everybody and you that you also are a divine spark of the universe. So that's who I am. That's who we are. But how I go about doing that, how I work, is through mediumship, through meditation, teaching meditation. I communicate with non-human intelligence. Um, I work as a conduit for healing, and I have for about, well, quite a long time. I want to say about 30 years.
Whoa.
Um, yeah, yeah. So it's been a long time doing this work.
Do you know what? You're the first person I think, to come on and explain themselves as not themselves. Do you know what I mean? As in the divine spark or whatever. You're the first person to say that. So well played, you. That's another 6 points. You're racking these up, aren't you?
Well, that's great. Glad to hear it.
Very much so. We'll see where we are at the end, okay? You've got to see if you get
Yes,
more
and
than 12.
more than 12 points. Do I get minused on points?
I
And
think
what
so.
do I get? What do I get for the points?
Well, towards the end, I do a section called Koit Zone, and I ask you random questions, and there can be a lot of points gained or lost in that
Oh, I
section. So,
lost, right? I'm
yeah,
sure.
no pressure again there. Okay,
Yeah.
so what was your personal introduction to the paranormal world, if we want to call it that?
Right, the paranormal, which is really normal.
Mm,
Again, in my opinion, it's just a step beyond what we're normally raised as and taught. And so I look at a lot of it as being just normal communication because everybody has that ability. The paranormal with me probably started, I was about, I don't know, I'm thinking of the first childhood house I lived in, and we moved when I was 12, so I think I was probably 8 or 10, somewhere in there. I lived in a very old house in New Hampshire. It was a 1700 early 1700s it was built. And I'm the youngest of five siblings, and we used to talk to, I don't even know where this came from in the family, but we used to talk to the owner originally of the house, and her name was Mrs. Chase. It was the Chase house. And so us kids would talk to Mrs. Chase all the time. And usually when we were in trouble, right, we did something wrong. And our parents, our dad would be like he'd come home from work and be the disciplinary back then, right? So it would be all day long. Mrs. Chase, can you please let Dad know that I didn't mean to do this or that or whatever? So Mrs. Chase was the first one we started communicating with. And, on I don't recommend this, but how we communicated with her was through the Ouija board because my uncle worked for Parker Brothers in Salem, Mass. And when that game first came out, he brought us kids up the Ouija board to play with. And we all brought it up to the attic and we're all, calling these spirits. And thank goodness we were probably very protected because we didn't know what we were doing. But that was my first introduction is picking up on a spirit in that house and not really knowing, what that was all about. And then, after that, moving to other houses, it was more just the sense that, my dad had seen a UFO. My brother and I saw one when I was 12 at the house. And that started all the other inquiries, if you will, about the bigger picture, like what's really going on here. And I think uh, paranormal activity, I was always drawn to that, as a teenager, I was drawn to that area of study, but I didn't really experience a lot until I was on my own and in my 20s. That's when things started really cooking. So
Okay, well let's
that's the
pick up there
beginning.
then. I'll jump right in before we hit your 20s then. So Mrs. Chase,
Yeah.
she was obviously around prior to you being born, presumably.
Yes. So, yeah.
Wh-
Back in the 1700s. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean that's a ghost itself or a
Hmm.
spirit in
A
oh, here
spirit.
comes
Yep.
my dog. He's
I was
decided to
gonna
come in
say,
and say hello. Yeah, it's not
speaking of
Mrs. Chase, don't
spirits.
worry. Yeah. So I'll lock him out in a sec because otherwise he'll do loads of shaking and noises. Yeah, so what was your introduction to Mrs. Chase? Because presumably your parents or whomever would have said, "Oh, by the way, there's
Yeah.
this here." How was that brought up? Do you know?
I think it was, I really don't remember exactly when the first time it was brought up. I just remember it was around the time that we got the Ouija board and we just started talking about Mrs. Chase, and it was just this random thing that the kids started, doing. And there was a joke like because the neighborhood house that we lived in probably was on like an acre or two, but originally it was like 20 acres and they built it was a carriage house, they built carriages and horses and all that were around. So we used to joke on our neighbor's property that first first plate in the little baseball that we played was like where Mrs. Chase was buried, stuff like that. The way kids always kind of come up with these stories and they're passed down to other kids. But sensing something in the house, I'm pretty sure I was about 7, and sensing possible, which what now I think is was my beginning of my NHI, introduction was there because I remember having some weird experiences where the bed felt like it was going backwards. I felt like a little dizzy, and this was at night sleeping. So there was some things going on there that, were just a touch of that. And I can't remember if now, I mean, we're going back quite a ways. So I can't remember if there was specific things that happen in the house, doors closing on their own, that kind of thing. I mean, it was an old house, so you'd always uh associate these things with just being an old house, like creaky floors and all that kind of stuff. So there was no apparition of her, but there was just a knowing. There's just a knowing that she was around, you know. So that's where it kind of started.
I would ask you this question: Was did the Ouija board not broad? Did the Ouija board bring Mrs. Chase into the house, or was she already there?
I think she was already there. I think that the intention of the Ouija board, because we were having fun with it and, everything, there was a lightness to it and a lightness to our life. There wasn't like this heavy trauma type stuff going on in my childhood. It was a very loving childhood. And lots of fun, regular sibling things, but the energy that we all, sent out was, I think, inviting to spirit. And so that's probably why we never drew in anything scary or anything like that. And we probably, knowing kids, we probably played with that for a very short period of time and then set it aside and moved on to other things, because back then, of course, you were outside most of the time. You were only in for short periods of time. I would not recommend the Ouija board now, knowing what I know now. I wouldn't say don't give it to your kids to just play with. It's not really a toy. Um, so yeah.
It was reminding me of Jumanji.
Yeah,
When you go up in the loft, go in, play that,
yes.
and then you don't want to end up in a different. Well, maybe you did end up in a different world. Do you know what I mean? Because you've sort of like,
Yes, we could have.
yeah,
We
yeah,
could have.
it's a
But
Jumanji.
it was definitely a really good vibe to it. And it was always playful and it was always a happy thing. It wasn't anything scary or dark at all. And like I said, I can only attribute that to how we were at the time, um, in that
Sure.
vibration of, higher frequency.
Okay, well, because you mentioned it, let's quickly go, or not quickly, let's go over your dad's UFO and your UFO experience at 12.
Oh.
Hit those for
Okay,
us.
so his experience was he was coming home from work. This was in the 60s. I can't remember the actual, I think I want to say 65, somewhere in there. And he was an engineer for electromechanical engineer. And he was coming home from work and he saw a cigar-shaped craft treetop in the center of town. So he, of course, pulled over and got out of his car. And as it went right over him, and he was astonished, he said, by the lack of sound and the way it was seemingly floating. And being an engineer, of course, he's got the whole thing in his mind, picturing all the lights and the distances, and thinking of things that way. And this particular UFO was traced back through I think it was from Portsmouth, New Hampshire, all the way to Salem, New Hampshire, which is probably a 45-minute drive. I don't know the mileage. But so it was seen by, I think, 12 other people in town and various other people along the pathway. So it was investigated. Um, I'm not really sure who investigated that. I do know they came back like 10 years later. There was some kind of follow-up investigation. And that was really strange because we lived in a different house and I was much older and the gentleman that came was very strange looking. And so we all joked around, led by my father, of course, after he left and asked his follow-up questions. My dad said geez, if anybody was an ET, he was, because he was very mechanical in the way he moved. He was dressed very proper in a suit coat, um, tie, white shirt, black suit coat and pants, dress pants. And when he went to shake my dad's hand, my father said that he lifted his arm in a mechanical manner like this, and then outreached like that, shook his hand, pulled it back the same way, almost as if it was like a robotic type of thing. So it became a joke in our family that, the ET is the one that wanted to come back and maybe for some reason make contact. I don't know. But that was the extent of his contact with ET. And then the next one for me, I've had contact right along in just about every house I've lived in, but the next one was in that same house. My brother was in his bedroom and I was in mine, and the window is behind me. So my bed's facing this way, the window's behind me, and I got the urge for some reason to get up and look out the window. And when I did, I saw a craft going down about a mile from where we were. Um, and it was going kind of following where the power lines went. And so I started yelling for my parents, look, everybody look out the window. So I ran and opened my bedroom door, and my brother was doing the same thing. He had seen it out of his window. And so we called our parents, and by the time they all came to the windows, the craft was gone.
Hmm.
But it was like a disc-shaped craft with a little hat like on the top, or a button. Some people call it like a button. Um, and it was rotating lights, very strange. And of course, back then, I mean, I was 12. There wasn't a lot of craft in the sky. And where I lived, there were very few houses on that road. It was way out in the woods. The night sky was brilliant because there wasn't a lot of lights,
Hmm.
and that was the next one. And then I've had some other experiences further down the line in other houses,
Cool. Well,
where
I want to get to those ones, but I'm going to push
okay,
those ones back
sure,
because I want to get directly into mediumship. But I'm going to ask you a couple of questions on your dad's UFO and then that one that there you mentioned.
yeah,
Do you know the chap that came back 10 years later and was mechanical arm and all that? Let's just play that out, right? Assume that
okay.
was some measure of alien or whatever. What's the purpose of that visit, do you think?
I don't know. He said it was, in seriousness, he said he couldn't remember when I asked him. He's in spirit now, just recently, but he recalled it being, I thought I remembered it, that it was like the FBI or something like that. That's how, as
Hmm.
a kid, I remembered it. but he said no, it was more of a private investigation that was taking place. Like, so I don't know if it was like a MUFON type of thing, or I don't even know how. I guess they found his name through one of the neighbors that saw it in that town. So she gave him his name because she knew that he had seen this. She was friends with my mother. And so that's how they got his name to begin with the first time around. But he said it was some kind of follow-up. It was 9 to 10 years later. And the questions were, what exactly did you see? What did you experience? What time was it? All those things that, that you would normally ask. So he never said, he just assumed that it was some sort of investigation follow up with everybody to correct any records or see if their memories had, maybe check their stories to see if anybody was embellishing anything, how the
Mm.
memory was. That's what he assumed. So, I mean, that's all I know about that. I just remember the gentleman coming to the house, walking down the hallway, sitting in the living room, and then we were told to leave, and it was just the conversation was between them, and then when he left, I just remember him going out the door. I don't even remember what he drove or anything like that. And then I remember my dad joking around after that about, that was weird, So um, I don't know. He did work on, he had some kind of top secret clearance, and he did work on some missile programs, and various companies that he worked for were military contractors. So whether that plays into any of this, I don't know.
Yeah,
I
it could have
would
done, couldn't it?
ass It could have, because they could have considered him a credible witness, you know, um, versus
Yeah, maybe
someone
maybe
that
the weird interactions might have even been a ploy to put him off his
to
game or something, you know?
It could have been. I never thought of that, but yeah, it could
Mm.
have been, you know?
Yeah, not a lot we can say or do about that because it's just hearsay through hearsay through hearsay, isn't it? At the
Right,
moment, in terms of that part of it, but it is
right.
interesting. I always like to
Yeah.
hear the weird stories. And your experience at 12 then of what the bit I'm interested in is the bit where you say you felt compelled or the urge to go
Mm,
and look. That's
yeah,
important because that's happened in my life as well on a couple of things. And there's
yeah.
like a knowing or something behind it. So from your perspective, what is that urge?
I now look at it that it was probably initial contact communication. And so that knowing is that, awareness that we all have. And in my family, just about all of us are psychic. And although the rest of my family doesn't pursue it the way I did, they didn't take that route. But even my mother would joke around. We would always joke around about her ESP. Her intuition was phenomenal. My dad's intuition was phenomenal. And we all kind of had that. And so I think being at a frequency where that was the norm, like just being open to possibilities. I came from a family that we would sit around the dining room table after dinner, on the weekends, I think it was, and talk about life stuff. And half of it I didn't understand when I was young, but as we got older, it was always talking about the bigger picture, what's going on. And so, you know, being more open to that, I think, and all having that ability being enhanced at that age already without even any training or practice. I think that, again, I think the contact was made. I now know my guide, who is a guardian, who is a interdimensional being. I now know that he's been with me since birth, and since before then, probably. Um, and I do believe it was that knowing is them making their first telepathic communication. And so you get that buzzing of um, just a knowing, and it drives you to do something. Um, I think probably so true for my brother also, although later on he had a major brain injury, so I think he lost a lot of his intuitive abilities, and that probably went to the wayside after that. But he could have had the same experience. But I don't really remember that. I do know he had a near death experience where he was out of body and met a counsel and, came back. And my other sister had also a near-death experience. So our family has all these, things that are maybe not the norm for
Mm.
everybody in every family. We certainly had our share of stuff like this going on. Um, but just enough that when we were younger, it wasn't like a big deal. It was just like, oh,
Oh, and this
something.
stuff exists. Oh, and it's there.
Yeah,
Don't worry
yeah.
about it. It's there.
Right, right.
This
Like
this urge to
my
get up though and look at the UFO. Do you
yeah,
think that was a
yeah.
nudge then by your spirit guide or whomever, just to say, look, there's a
I
bigger
do.
world?
Yeah, I do.
That's what it
Because
is.
it was so, yeah, because it's that first, at a younger age, seeing a craft that is not norm. And I wasn't like familiar with craft. Um, but my dad was into planes and my brother was into that a little bit. So, it was fun to go see a plane or you watch a plane in the sky, that kind of thing. And it was very odd. It was so different. And there was just a knowing of something and an excitement about seeing it. And so, yeah, I do think it was probably my guide. It was probably that little nudge. It's sort of like what's happening now for the general public. It's sort of like all these little sightings is getting people used to seeing something anomalous out there. And that's their introduction.
Yeah, like a very, very, very soft disclosure. It's
Yeah,
getting us ready
yeah,
to the point. Oh, it's just taken over time, obviously, and from our perspective, it's a long time. But in this cosmic scheme of things, it's a
yeah,
blink, isn't it?
right,
Okay, so
right.
this knowing leads us into the main topic we're talking about today, which is mediumship.
Hmm.
So, how did you personally start getting involved in mediumship? And to you, what is it exactly?
So I got involved. I had a lot of these messages coming in dreams, and they were always for like friends and this type of thing. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night and from a dream with information, and I thought that's odd. And let me back up to I met my husband, and this was 1979. In 80, we got married, and it was about that time we had a business, and there's this, and probably go out about 5 to well, probably 8 years. And we started running into problems with the business. We had somebody embezzle money from us. And it was just like this long story. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like this major life-changing, yeah, at an early age, exactly. So we lost the business, we lost our house, we had all those emotions, that the embarrassment, the failure, all those lower emotions that you feel
Mm,
when something like that happens. Um, and but what happened with, I remember praying and asking at that time, right before this happened, for total enlightenment, right? Silly, naive thought, but I wanted total spiritual enlightenment. There's got to be more to life than this stuff working and all this crap. So, and then that happened, right? So be
crap.
careful what you, yeah,
It is,
be
isn't
careful what you ask for.
it?
Be careful what you ask for, because it happens. The universe will deliver it, and it did with a big bang. Um, but through that, I found other studies, the Course in Miracles, and some other things, some other thought process studies that brought me into back to what really is important. And so that was about the time that I got connected with some people who were a shaman, a woman that was a Native American, and I started going to some Native American circles and this kind of thing, healing circles, that brought me to more of awareness of what's important. At the same time of the destruction of my life, except, the two things that were important to me is my child, which she was 2 when this all happened, 2.5, and my husband. Those were the two most important things um, to me. So it's like, whatever happens, I'm not losing these two people, right?
Mm,
So I kind of went the way of digging deeper into my spirituality. And that's what was the catalyst. And it wasn't easy. I'm kind of glossing over this, but it wasn't easy. But by doing that, I met several people that were psychic. And so I started developing that. And I also had I had a person coming into my dreams, and it was someone who had passed at a very young age, and it was very traumatic, the passing. And I didn't understand why every year I would have this horrible dream. And I was telling somebody else about it, and they said to me, "You need to see a medium." And I said, "Oh, okay. Well, what's that?" Exactly.
Mm.
Um, because I never heard the word mediumship before then. I just communicating with spirit was like talking to a ghost, just assuming that they are there. But I even used to make fun of some of this, I mean, that's how closed I was to all that. Um, but uh, so I went to a medium, and she told me, I think this is happening because it had happened for 10 years. I every year I would have this dream, and I would forget about it, and then it would happen again the next year. And it's like finally I would put together, this is like the same month every year. And she communicated with the spirit, and she did find, in fact, that that was what was driving me to there, what to meet her, was learning how to release the spirit, that spirit came to me to be honored and released. And the only thing I can really say about that is, I was taking her word for that at the moment, but she did teach me what to do. So I went home and I said some prayerful thoughts and then set intention. And it was kind of funny because this person was a missing person, and her photograph was always a certain way, her picture in the photograph. And when I saw her, when I talked to her, when I opened up and did this, she was smiling, you know? And it was like a totally different vibe than the previous of what I experienced, of what she experienced when she passed. And so that was the big event that happened to me to make me search out uh, books on mediumship, or look for, and there wasn't that many, but there was some. And that's when I found the spiritualist churches. And I thought, huh, okay. And I went to a spiritualist church to see what that was all about. My husband stayed home because he said, if it's a cult, well, I'm going to pull you out. There's going to be one of us that stays out of the cult, right?
Yeah, gotcha.
Because, even though I had all these experiences, I'm still, and even today, after all these years, I'm still what I call a healthy skeptic. You need to test everything. You need to verify as much as possible what you can verify. And some of it is not verifiable, but a lot of it can be, well, with spirit communication anyways, with mediumship. And so that really opened up the gateway. But on top of that, I had another visit from ETs. And it was two visits, that one and the next one, that right after those visits, which I only figured this out in the past couple of years, but it was right after those visits that my psychic abilities, my mediumship abilities, my healing abilities just blossomed. Just, it was like a switch went on, and I went from being really pretty good to being very good, very accurate for the verifiable ones. So I now know that that had something to do with it. That was kind of like tweaking along the way, is what I believe anyways now.
Okay, so you
It's
were open, so to speak, open to the world of mediumship via that dream that was recurring over, like you said,
Yes,
10
yeah.
visits or so, 10 years.
10 years.
Here's the
Yeah.
question for you then. Was that spirit coming to you every 10 years? Was that just for you, or was that sending out energy to, say, 1,000 people, and then you were just the one to solve it, or was it just for you?
That's a good question. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. I do know, the medium that had originally told me, her words were, she came to you because this was in your vicinity. And so it was already something that I knew about. So I don't know if that's why, or if if she had been stuck in the earth plane, which I don't think happens as much as people think, but if she was stuck there, why would she keep choosing me unless it was some there was some aspect of that was part of her uh soul plan, if you want to call it that,
That's what I
or
was thinking.
spiritual.
I wonder if
Yeah.
it's her plan to be the key that wakes you up.
Yes, yes. I think that's true. I think, but whether she affected anybody else, I don't
Hmm.
know. I've never met anybody that had any communication with her. Um, but, you know, I don't know. Yeah. But it
It's
definitely woke me up. It
Oh, I
definitely
bet it did. It's mind blowing to
wasn't,
think about that the plan is not only what you do here, but it's interaction from elsewhere as well that also affects it. So it's
yeah,
multi-layered plan.
it is multi-layered. And just like with our ET and interdimensional, our guides, these beings of light, they're all part of this plan, and it gets played out a pretty interesting way.
Hmm.
I think we have a certain amount of free will to make these decisions, but I think these major points, and that certainly was a huge one for me. I think those major points that pull you, like when I went into the spiritualist church, I sat in the back and I watched the medium work. And then she came to me. She gave me a message from my grandmother, and it was extremely and nobody knew me there, and it was extremely verifiable. And I knew at that point, and I was very closed off with people. Animals were my thing. I loved animals. I had a farm. People, not so much. I had a little problem with people. Okay. A little closed off and a little angry with people. But animals was a huge thing. And when I was given that message, I looked at the medium and I knew I had a knowing, and I knew I was going to be up doing that kind of work on the platform. And I was very like, I'm not a shy person when I get going, but back then I was a closed off person. I was walled up. So you'd never get me to talk in front of a group of people. And I did not like groups, and I would not, talk about my personal stuff. So it's funny how I was very closed off and my heart center very closed. And then the animals brought me in. This all brought me into healing work with the animals. And then that brought me into healing people and opened my heart in a way that just, you know, was an amazing experience because I was so shut off from people, and to be going totally the other way and then finding a balance now in my life with that is a precious gift, that I
I'd
worked
say,
through.
yeah. It's nice
Yeah.
personal growth anyway. But
Yeah.
back to the question of mediumship, right? We know how you
Yes.
got started. What do you think it is as a phenomenon?
Oh, as a phenomenon, well, I think it's uh telepathic communication with consciousness. So I do believe that you cross this particular plane of existence, you go into other areas, other dimensions or densities, and we survive that. There is this essence, this soul essence, even though we are one in the mind of infinite intelligence, you could say, we still are like cells in the body, right? We're just in a different form. We're moved into a different area. And so mediumship is the communication with beings, with consciousness on many different levels. And in spiritualism, it was to prove the continuity of life. That's what it's supposed to be for. It's not supposed to be for like, you know, uh, fortune telling, so to speak,
Hmm.
as they say, but that's another whole thing. But yeah, so it's communication with spirit, it's communication with consciousness. And through practice, I can only speak for me on this and people I've taught over the years, that through practice and positivity, I think you learn the difference between how to telepathically communicate with an animal versus a spirit, someone in spirit. And then the more you practice, the better you get at getting the verifiable information, who they were, how they lived, their name, description of body, how they passed, and then deliver a message. Um, so that to me was always, back then when I was introduced to it and I learned about it, it was verification for the continuous life, continuity of life, and that there is something more. And so that's what I kind of feel like the bigger part of that is. I mean, there's a lot of subs to that with, helping somebody through the grieving process and understanding that, yeah, they're still with us, but yet in another dimension, so another existence. Yeah.
Do you know how it works, how the process of it works? Have you ever been taught that or shown that or knowing it?
Yes, well, the process is elevating your energy, and of course spirit has to lower their vibration. They're at a higher frequency than us, so it's a freak. I go like this, but it's really kind of this way. I see it as this way. I see it as we're in this dimension, and you've heard probably, and I'm sure so many people have heard this, but it is like dialing, the dial on a
On
radio.
a radio, yeah, yeah.
Dating myself because I don't think they make radio dials anymore, but a dial on a radio, your frequency is at a certain place to talk to spirit. It's at a certain place to telepathically communicate with animals, whether they're on Earth or whether they're in spirit. And it's quite different frequency to communicate with your spirit guides and ETs and interdimensionals. So that's a different frequency altogether. And it's learning how to move that dial, move the frequency, and zone in on that communication through that. It's all about energy. It's all
So
about
how
energy.
how does that get achieved then? How do you tune in to a different area?
Well, I think it's a process that takes time to learn. Um, and part of that process for me ties into the energy centers in the body. So the chakras, or chakras as some people call them. It's tuning into that. It's opening up the channels in your well, depending on how you work, it's learning about, what they call the clairs, right? What are you good at? Do you sense things? Where are you already and where to develop? And you should practice them all just to see what you're good at. But it's fine tuning those areas in the body that are tied into those frequencies that govern the emotional and mental plane in the physical. And so for me, it was like opening up all my centers, or certain ones, the heart center and the third eye, the crown center, the throat center for communication. So it's grounding to the earth through the root chakra, being grounded, staying even mind as much as possible, approaching this in a way that is um, spiritual for me. I mean, I don't want to get into that, but for me, it's very much a spiritual. It's an honor to communicate with spirit and to bring somebody's loved one in and bring in a message. And so learning to do that was a practice of meditation. I met a daily meditation practice, learning all I could about the energy centers, learning the various understandings about energy centers, because we still don't have a complete, there's that yogic systems and all that, but there's a lot of ancient systems in various cultures that go into all the energy and how to move it through your body, how to understand how to open it, um, how to shift frequency. And really it has a lot to do with all these things that I just mentioned, but also how you're living, what your predominant vibration is what you're going to attract. So, learning everything you can about energy and the opening and closing of different energy centers as you're communicating, how to close that down so you can function in the earth plane, you know, it's a shifting, if you will, of
Is it then just a combination of knowledge of certain things, mindset, and focus?
I believe it is. I believe it is. I think, some of us come in a little more open than others. I mean, the kids that are coming in now are very psychic. They're like right on. It's amazing. And telepathic communication, as my guide has taught me, telepathic communication is everything, because that's where humanity is going as we make the shift into this frequency change that Mother Earth is making, and that consciousness in this density is making a shift to a higher frequency. And as we do that, um, telepathic communication is really important, because that's where we're going. And that I tend to get off on big tangents with the Earth stuff and consciousness, so you have to stop me.
No, that's okay. Well, I'm going to
Of
stop
that.
you right now then, and
Because I,
ask this question. Here's a weird one, right? Because you just mentioned the Earth, and we're all changing, and Earth is changing frequency as well. Does that mean we're all phasing out of this existence, and then ultimately we won't be 3D material like we are now? You know, dense. We will all be just, I don't know, spirits of the Earth,
well,
spirit rock, spirit people, everything.
right. There is a couple of different theories on that, belief systems on that. So and they intertwine. You know how it is. There's a lot of information that gets thrown around. I don't think as that shift happens, I don't think that we all go into that dimension. I think some people stay in a third dimension, physical, material vibe, depending on where they're at and how they live their life and with, basically where they're at with their whole concept and understanding and frequency. And I think that there are an infinite number of realities. And, this is where quantum physics comes in, the explanation of the existence of a quantum field of possibilities. So I think it's when we start shifting our consciousness and all you have to do is sometimes people think, oh yeah, the world's really bad now and it's the worst it's ever been. Not really. You're seeing a polarity pull because there is this uh, vibrational change that is happening, not just with the earth, but with us too, with humanity. And I think that with that shift, it's people tend to look at the polarization, but all the dark stuff, the shadow stuff that we all have, the things we've experienced as a collective is actually being shown to us. They'll be healed. It's sort of like I had the first time I had cancer, I was like, what is this all about? I'm the happiest I've ever been in my life. Everything's going great. My business is great. I have all these people I'm teaching all this stuff to, and then I get sick. What the heck is this all about? And, my guide had told me, yeah, because I was at the first week anyways, I was in a lot of fear about it. And, is this the end kind of thing? You get this big tumor, you got to go through all this chemo and radiation and, is this the end? And my guide had said to me, it's not the end. It is the beginning of a new cycle, but the tumor is showing itself to be healed. That's the end. That's the physical part. You've healed the mind, but you need to heal the physical. So the physical needs to be healed for you to move into a different frequency of thought, a different loop playing in your head. And so it's a progression. So the same thing happens with the earth, that we have this negative, seemingly negative, but out of that negative comes so much growth, so much. It's like a catapult towards the positive, towards the understanding or looking at everything in a different way. And so that's what's happening in the earth right now, too, is like we are making that shift as a whole, but not everybody's making that shift. But as a collective, hopefully enough people will make that shift so that we just step into, we overlap, we, you know, move through the two earths that are very close in frequency, and then we go with that higher frequency, which is a more peaceful state of being. There's still a little polarity going on there, but nothing like there is now.
So here's the question on that then, right? Let's just take just two of these, right? There's two Earths overlapping like this. Let's just say 2 billion people are our souls. They don't want to go anywhere. They're negative. The other 6 billion, they're good people. We want to move forward. So this Earth sort of slightly moves towards the good. This one stays still. Does that mean, say, if you had a partner that's in this negative camp and you've moved over here, who came with you? Because your girlfriend's still there, your wife's still there, or whatever.
So in that other earth, there's already another you. And so you're just shifting your point of attraction, really. There's this that consciousness shifts and you move into that existence. It's like, and this is where the mandala effect that people talk about, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
That's where that kind of interplays. Like as a collective, we're actually seeing that. Whereas before it would just be on a personal level. Like all of a sudden, you might move into this new frequency and your husband or significant other in that frequency is maybe kinder, gentler. And you're like, oh, well, I don't know. It's not a huge thing, a gentle shift. And so you don't even notice these unless you're really attuned to it and watching for it. You don't even notice those little shifts, those little conscious possibilities that change. I mean, then there's this whole other theory that there are two separate Earths. There will be things that will shift and cause a change that those beings that choose, and I wouldn't say better or worse or negative and positive,
Mm.
I would say just different frequencies, right?
Yeah. I just use those terms to easily identify them,
Yes,
to split
yeah,
them.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I don't think 2 billion people are arseholes, by the way. You know what I mean?
yeah. Well, I think so to answer that question, I mean, this is just my thoughts on it, that there is this other theory that talks about the timeline that is destructive. So there's earth changes that happen. There's a lot of uh shaking of the earth and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of souls that move on, let's just say. And then there's this timeline where a lot of us shift to that higher consciousness, and it's just like breathing air. It's just like, you could, and I really think it's that way. I think it's just like a breathing. You breathe in, you breathe out. And that moment of life of just breathing in and being at one with everything, and your point of attraction shifts, and you breathe out and you're living in that moment. And I think it's that way. It's sort of like when you go to an area that has more spirit activity. Um, it's existing like this. It's existing together. So those two, the veil is thin right now. The existence is more, there's more awareness of the existence. And the more we talk about things, the more that people are conscious of these other possibilities and the other realities, it draws it even closer. So we see an increase in that activity. We see an increase in spirit activity. We see an increase in beings of light helping uh, humanity, earth people, helping us move through these changes. Um, there's more people, as silly as some of the stuff is that's online, it still helps because, more people are aware of, oh, geez, 1111, that means something, right? And it may be like, okay, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But if that person changes their point of attraction from being in a lower vibration, maybe a little sad or depressed for some reason, and they see 1111 and they notice it and they go, oh, that's like an angel number thing. When you see one of those, I gotta look that up, and they look something up. And so this is where the law of attraction comes in, because is that person receiving a message from their spirit guide that just nudges them in the right direction to start looking at life a little bigger than what their little problem is that they think is huge? Or is it a message from that? Or is it just somebody else in consciousness put it out there, and now people are, looking for, the people are hungry for experience and an understanding of a bigger picture, a bigger meaning to life, always searching for who I am, right? And why we're here. So that little 1111 takes them in another direction. They look at it and they say, oh, that's a message from an angel saying, whatever, you're on the right path, keep going, move to this direction, da 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 da. And did they create that moment themselves out of the lower vibration of maybe being sad and wanting to feel better? Did they create something over here,
That then nudge them in a
unknowing,
direction. Yeah, it's a
that nudged them in that
chicken and egg
direction?
themselves. Yeah, it's a weird thing.
Right, right. So,
But getting back to the overlapping Earth theories, right? Just think about it this way: does it? I mean, you could we argue, I suppose, that every time I breathe in and out, like going down that route you mentioned, it's a different Earth every single time. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm making
yeah,
decisions almost every second, aren't I? Well, more
right.
than that, many times more than that. So
Yes.
is
Yep.
it new Earth, new Earth, new Earth, new Earth? And then ultimately, what I'm trying to get at is, am I leaving people in my life behind because I've chosen a different path, or do they come with me?
They don't, they're already there. It's their collective, it's the consciousness that shifts. Okay. So there's actually in other possibilities, there is this is my understanding of it, that there is there is the energy, the thought that is in existence. And when I shift my consciousness to the thought of that other existence, I'm in it. And so too are those people. Okay. So it's then I'm in this higher vibrational thought, and say that's true. And say my partner is not vibrating the same way, just a little bit below me, maybe, or a different frequency below. Um, Me being in that slightly higher frequency may cause them to join me. Okay. It may cause enough shift in their consciousness. We know that when we see in science, there's a scientific study that the split uh, atoms theory, that when you look at something, it materializes, and when you're not looking, it goes through a double split. I'm
Double slit
butchering this whole,
experiment. Yeah,
yeah,
it's
I
either
mean,
there or it isn't.
yeah, and it's kind of like that. If you want to think about it, that so that they're in existence, there's all these different multitudes of existence, and we just shift our consciousness into each one, and um and they're still there. They're you're all the same people are there. So that's one theory, and the other theory is, of course, what I spoke of earlier, that some fall off and, and cross over and things happen, and this earth stays in the 3D, and it stays vibrational, and we just shift our consciousness to another earth. So there's those two theories that I'm aware of explaining that. And I find it to be in the places that I've walked in my meditations and my guides have taken me on, and ET has taken me on. It is unexplainable at this point. I'm not a scientist, so I can't explain it, but I do the best I can with understanding where they've taken me and seeing things that are not part of this reality. And it's really difficult to explain that. How do you explain a shape to somebody that does not exist here, but I've seen it elsewhere? And I've seen beings in that environment, um, eh, living the way they live in a totally different frequency. And taking that knowledge back and trying to explain it is pretty near impossible, although I'm trying to do that now in my writings. Um, but yeah, so you have to think consciousness, what survives, not the physical body, even though there is a correlation or a causation of the physical body changing. It certainly does change when you change your frequency. If you're staying in the vibration of this earth, say, and over time you learn how to elevate, like say this, okay, I'll give you an example.
Hmm.
Say I'm feeling, I have a massive headache and I'm not feeling very well, but I've made a commitment to do some mediumship with someone. Um, my consciousness shifts into a higher frequency when I am at work. And so when I'm working, I make that shift. The whole time I'm on platform or I'm working one-on-one, doesn't matter. I've shifted into a reality where there's no sickness in my body. Absolutely nothing is wrong. And I'm able to give messages. I, can be in severe pain and not even think about that. It's gone. It's just simply gone. When I shift back to the personality Laurie in this vibration, and I step out the door and I have to deal with, driving down the road and people cutting me off and all the things that trigger us, right?
Yeah.
I might not react the way I used to, uh, but it does snap you back into, oh, all of a sudden my headache's back and my this is back and my ache and my pain and blah, blah, blah. And it's because I'm back in this dense energy fully. My consciousness is back in the dense energy of 3D versus where was that vibration when I was functioning. So the key now is to try to function at a higher, predominantly higher frequency so that I am creating from that higher frequency a healthy body, a healthy mind, a healthy spirit, that whole thing. It really does matter what we think and how we react or act in situations. It makes a difference.
Yeah, and it's a mind blowing thing, this, when you couple that, the frequency thing, with the potentiality for a myriad of Earths all at the same time. Some people come with, some people
Yes.
not. It's a mind blower. So I'm actually going to gloss slightly forward over that because otherwise we'll be there all day
Yeah.
debating it. So,
Yes.
mediumship, who are you connecting with? What are they?
Well,
What is it?
okay, so it's the essence of the spirit of the being of who they were in the last incarnation, or it is the essence of that energy that they are identifying from the higher realms, if it's a spirit guide. My spirit guide explains it to me that he's from the eighth dimension logos. And then he said, not even that is a correct statement because they're a collective. And I say he all the time. Sometimes I say they because it's a collective from that. But in order to communicate most of the time with me, they take on a persona in the fifth dimension in the Arcturian range of frequency in order to communicate or sometimes come in physical to the 3D from who they are. Okay. And so that brings down to a he and then incarnating in the way that they communicate. So when I first started with mediumship, I had two guides. I had a woman who, in her last incarnation, was a medium. When she crossed over, she decided to continue that work from the other side to learn from what it's like on that side. And so she would help me with messages. She would come in and help me communicate and learn the difference, the feel of the energy of any particular being that was coming in. And so, and they would also be like a gatekeeper, so that I would always set a lot of strong intentions of only the highest and best come in for healing for the person I'm reading for. For me, it was always about the healing. It wasn't a parlor game. It wasn't, I wasn't into the table tipping and all that. And it's not to say that doesn't have some value. It's just not what I'm into. I'm
Sure.
I'm more have always been into, I wanted to be it's kind of funny actually because when I when I first started getting into mediumship, I was like, I want to be a really good medium. I want to validate as much as possible, as scientific as much as possible, as much as you can do something like that. And I don't want to, tell people about this or that. I don't want to talk to higher beings. I don't want to talk to ET. I'm not gonna, be all in that airy fairy realm. And usually when I fight something or something, there's a little there. It means I have a lot to learn that I haven't learned. So
And you're going to
I
go
guess
there regardless of your
yeah,
thoughts.
it's them. Yep, yep. So it's kind of funny. I laugh at it now because it's really funny the direction this took. But again, you're talking to a entity who is using that form, and their form has actually changed to agree. Like depends on where they went and how what their knowledge is, their base knowledge and their frequency, their predominant frequency. Um, because they can't step up to the higher planes of existence unless you've done the work, so to speak, and your vibration is there. So a lot of guides had incarnations in the earth plane, not always, but um, a lot of people think that they're family members of guides, and that may be true for some, but usually it's someone that's had multiple lifetime experiences and also has worked in spirit for quite a while. And because sometimes you'll get a multitude of guides, and they're newer guides and older, more experienced guides, I guess you could say. Um, so there's that to deal with. So when I first worked this way in mental mediumship, because I also did physical mediumship, went into trance and transfiguration, all that stuff. Um, which I feel people, if they're going to get into this, should learn all and certainly go to some of the old school stuff because there's a lot of information out there um, a lot of things written from the 1800s, in early 1900s that give more information about these different ways of working versus some of the newer stuff, which is more about, like you pick up a book now and it's more about the medium, their life and all that. The older books are more about the mediumship and the styles of mediumship, the ways you work, the way spirit works with you, and how communication works. And there's a lot of steps there. I'm glossing over all of it, but it's not it really should take some decent study in practice to move it forward.
So connection then.
Yes.
I know there's been talk of 11 dimensions that we're aware of as a species. Science
Hmm.
says there in theory is 11 dimensions, and I'm just thinking of them like stacked on top of each other, right? So you
Right,
said one
right.
of your guides is from the eighth Lagos or whatever it's called. I thought that was an African
Logos.
country. Oh, Logos.
Yeah.
Yes, isn't that a name or something, isn't it?
The logos.
Not Lagos. So
Legos.
yeah, you've got eight or Legos, yeah, from Denmark. You've got him up here in eight, and he's saying they have to go down through five to get a he status, just so that they can then communicate down to one, which is where we are,
For
presumably.
me, this
Right.
particular being for me, that's the way they work it. And that would be based also on where I'm at. And it crisscrosses this whole non-human intelligence information because they, as an Octorian, they communicate in this frequency from this universe. Okay. So it gets kind of wild there because it's like, well, how does that work? And so it does, and he said to me, even saying the eighth dimension logos can be confusing. Like a scientist would not look at that the same way as a spiritualist would look at it, or someone who's delving into this realm the way we are, because the meanings, we're not using the same words in the same way, really. There's a little bit of a mix in that. But he said in order to say the realm of thought where he is from, and that thought is um, a collective. So it's not a collective in the sense, because people will talk about ETs being a collective, like a hive mind. It's not a
Hmm.
hive mind. It's not a hive mind. It's a collective that is consciousness that is also still has the capability of a certain amount of individuality. All right. And so it's even that's not quite right, but I don't have the word for it. So in that collective, in order to funnel down through the frequencies into my brain and the way I elevate, it's best he comes from that fifth dimension, bilocates to that fifth dimension, and then communicates because I can't go up to the eighth dimension. Um,
There's only so far
well,
we can stretch from here, sort of thing.
yeah, I can, but only in a certain way, and that's more of a private work, elevating all the energy through all my centers and moving into the collective. So it's actually leaving the body and moving into the collective, gathering the information and bringing it down. And when you bring it back, you only can get so much into this brain, because it's human. And so it gets really funky. And the understanding of it, I'm not a scholar. I'm not a scientist. In fact, my guide said to me once, leave the science to the scientists, Laurie. But this isn't why we connected with you. We didn't connect with you to give you the science. We'll give you what we can that you will understand. But we connected with you for the vibrational pattern that I hold and the ability to explain things and teach meditation and that type of stuff. So, it's the spirituality in this dimension that is what I'm here to, what I said early on, divine spark of the universe, here to make manifest, to remind you that you're a divine spark of the universe, because people have forgotten that. They've forgotten who they are, and they don't realize how divine they are, and they don't realize how powerful they are, and how they can create around them what
Mm.
they create.
I'm still struck by this eighth dimension thing, so I have a question
Mm,
on that.
yes.
This being from there,
Hmm.
had said to you that he's from the eighth thing, logos or whatever that word was, is that the
Logos.
true name of their realm, or is it
No,
just an identifier for you?
it's an identifier for me. The true name to that realm cannot be spoken in this language. There's no word for it. The closest I can come is the light, um, a more harmonious collective of the consciousness of oneness, of infinite intelligence. Um, they're from that collective. And it's a they until it moves into a vibratory rate in the bilocation of the fifth dimension. And
That
so
could then be
again,
considered an individual,
yeah.
yeah.
So those words, as he said, that doesn't, just like his name, I call him David. Well, no, his he doesn't have a name. It's the collective, it's the one, it's the light. So from that frequency of thought, and it's the element also of fire that comes into well, that's going to just confuse.
Yeah, let's not go down that tangent
Yeah,
because my
that's like
mind's already
another
blown. So
that's another whole 10-hour conversation, which
exactly.
I could probably hold.
Let's branch into animal communication. I know you touched on this earlier.
Yeah.
How is that achieved? Is it a mediumship of sorts, or are we reading body language? What
No,
are we doing?
it's um well, when I work, I can do both, but it's not mediumship. It is a lower frequency, a little bit lower than that. So it's the psychic, more in the psychic frequency is how I explain it. It's telepathic communication. So it's the way animals communicate to me is not in like a sentence, right? They're not going to say, "Okay, my knee hurts." No,
Hmm.
they're going to project their knee to me, or they're not. Sometimes they won't even talk to me, and so it's me who psychically takes my consciousness and goes into their physical apparatus, their vessel, and I see where the points are that physically need work. And that includes the mental layers. So, mentally, if they're having a difficulty, I can go in and see mentally how they're seeing something and what they're scared of or what's going on. So, when I do animal communication, I have a particular guide that works with me to help me understand the communication. And so if I can't get communication directly from the animal, because lots of animals don't understand that energy, they understand a lot more easier than us, but not in the way we do it. Okay. So it's kind of like that's when the guide comes in if I'm trying to just get an answer and I can't pick it up myself. But the telepathic communication, when you link up with an animal and they realize, oh, you're here to help them, because it's usually to help give information, to relay something to the owner. And I work a lot with horses. So the horses have each animal has their evolutionary path and what they're on and how they help heal humans and work with humans is part of their evolutionary path and development. And so once they see that there's a human that can understand their language, they tend to talk more. They tend to communicate more how they see something or what's happened in their past that causes them to think a certain way.
Can you give
Um,
us a couple of examples of times where you've had communication? Let's just choose horses. I'm going to choose that one because you mentioned it, and because my girlfriend is a horse riding instructor, so she'll like this story. Have you got any?
so when tons. I mean,
Go for it.
I've probably read for over 1,000, I don't know, in the thousands over the years. There's just been so many with the animals. Um, Yeah, it's hard to narrow one down, but it goes something like this. So if I'm physically there with the animal, I first expand my energy. So my energy field expands and it goes into their energy field.
Okay.
Horses will often, especially if they have a problem with people, they'll back up. They'll be like, "Whoa, what the heck?" and who are you? And you're stepping right into my energy, that kind of thing. And they'll respond that way. And so then I'll go slowly and I'll start relaying to them energetically my print, it's like a thumbprint, if you will, my energetic print or patterns to them, that I am here to help them. And so how I do that is I open up my heart center and I send love to them. And usually, and this goes for wild animals too, I mean, not in a heightened state, but in a calmer state. I'm talking like squirrels and things like that. Not a lion or a bear. Don't do this
Yeah,
when
don't
you,
go near those. Yeah.
yeah. You can send love to a bear, but I'd be real careful about just doing that. Um, but that's because you'll have that physical reaction and that fight or flight, and when that
Mm.
kicks in, that triggers their fight, their fight and all that.
That's it. You
Um,
send them that your love, and that they send you their teeth.
yeah, exactly, exactly. So I send love to that horse, say, to let them know that's where I'm coming from. I'm meeting you on the heart center, and everything is heart centered here. So it's all about helping you and helping your owner understand the connection. And so then I will ask them sometimes, what would you like to relay back to your owner? What, usually first I go into their energy field and get anything physical that's going on. And I'll ask the owner sometimes, oh, did this horse have a problem with their left knee? And they'll say yes or no. And yeah, they had an injury there about 2 years ago, blah, blah, blah. And the vet said, I said, okay, well, there's residual energy. I'm picking up on the residual energy there. So that means just, keep doing what you're doing with that, but know that the residual energy is there, and maybe give this horse some energy work or chiropractic work, things that will shift them, and the rest of that energy can be released so they don't hang on to their injuries, sort of like we do, because people do the same thing. We have an injury, an old injury, and lo and behold, we get older, the body starts breaking down, those things come back. But that's because we'd never let go of what caused the injury, what the true the true pattern behind the cause of the injury. So with the animal, there's work to do there. So I continue on and do the physical. Then, and that's all with the heart centered. And then I will go ask the horse if there's anything they would like to relay to the person. And quite often they'll tell me, they'll say, I don't like my new bedding. They changed the bedding. I don't like this. They put little pellets down. How am I supposed to, they'll just, once they know, they just pew. And I'm thinking, holy moly. And so I'll relay to the owner. They just said they don't like the bedding. Did you change the bedding? Because that's what they're talking about. They don't like it. And the owners are like, what? They're shocked by something like that, but that's how it goes. That's how the communication goes. It's usually something has changed or a new horse has come in next to that, and that affects them just like it would affect us. We have a new neighbor, maybe we don't like them that much. So it kind of sets us off a little bit. And if they were in our face next to us in a stall, then it might really set us off if they're like an obnoxious neighbor. And so that's how horses are. They're very, very sensitive animals. And they're also very sensitive to their owners, just like dogs and cats are. I'll have a call about a dog that my dog is so afraid of thunder and lightning. And, I don't know what to do. I've tried medicine and I've tried this and that, and nothing's working. And I get talking to the dog and I find out the dog only learned that as a puppy from the owner, because the owner's petrified of electrical storms or whatever. And they picked it up from mummy's worried and now it's created this whole function of, you know, their owner is worried because they're anticipating that the dog's going to freak out because he freaked out last time. And it's this vicious circle until
Psycho,
we
yeah.
can, yeah, until we can communicate and let them know that there's nothing to be afraid of, that it isn't going to harm them. And often that releases it enough that, overnight, sometimes their personalities will change. Things that were stuck, they let go of.
Has an
So,
animal ever
excuse me.
said anything to you that would make you think it's not an animal? And what I mean by that is not just, oh, I changed the bed in. Have they ever said anything profound that makes you think, crikey, they know things?
They do know things. And
No, I mean like
we
highly intelligent stuff that you wouldn't
yes,
expect an
yes,
animal to know.
yes. And I have seen a change over the last 25 years, 30 years, whatever, that the animals that have their consciousness has also increased. Their intelligence has increase. As we have taken the dog on a chain outside, and that's the family dog, to the family dog's now laying on the couch next to us and treated like a king, that has allowed that growth of that expansion of love. And when you have love, it expands knowledge. So love is the basis frequency that changes everything. Everything comes from that vibration, really. So for them, that evolution has happened. Now, saying that, I have had, especially cats. Cats are. That's why some people, man, some people don't like cats. I don't like cats. No, that's because the cat knows everything about you, and people are uncomfortable with that. Just like some people, like, oh, mediumship, that scares me. I don't want to do that. I don't want to hear about it. Da, 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 da. That's because the medium can read you if they want to, which I don't agree with reading somebody when they're not asking. I think that's unethical. I'm very, very in the forefront with that. There's a lot of ethics and morals that I believe should be adhered to and teached more. And I don't know if that's really taught anymore, but you shouldn't just meet someone and go snooping in their art field. That to me is a no-no. And I'm not okay. I don't want to judge anybody else that does that, but for me, it is a no-no. So you're gonna automatically pick up on things because that's our nature, right? We're very sensitive creatures, and so the same. I'm getting off topic again, but back to the
Yeah, back to
see
the
how
animals and,
easy?
and
Yeah,
profound state. What have they said
the
to you that's
profound.
profound?
I think profound has been when an animal relates something about the person. To me, that's kind of profound, that they actually know something to do with what's in the mind of that person. So that tells me that that animal has communicated and that person has communicated in a way that is consciousness connection, is making that connection. Um, no, has an animal told me something profound like the secrets of the universe?
Yeah,
No,
that's what I was getting at, and
no,
also
no.
this, right? Imagine if you were talking to a parrot as an example. I know that's a
Hmm.
bad example. Let's just say a dog then, and a dog says to you, "Oh, a squared equals b squared plus c squared." That's an
Yeah.
example, right?
Hmm.
That sort of thing that you would expect from a human.
I have never, I'm sure there are animal communicators that have gotten some things that are, but I have never gotten anything like that. I have never gotten anything that makes me feel like that animal was a human before and incarnated as a human. I know some people think that that doesn't cross, and some people think it crosses. I do know I've talked to people and spirits who were um, in lower realms before, but I've never talked to a animal who claims to have been a person before. Not directly, no,
Hmm. That
no.
would be interesting if there
And
was a case like
it
that.
would be interesting,
Highly.
now that you've said that, I gotta go talk to some animals.
You got to, yeah, definitely go looking for it because that would be if you found that, wouldn't that be amazing?
But you know what? If I found an animal that would tell me some kind of scientific thing, they wouldn't talk to me in that realm anyways, because I'm not good at science. I don't understand that stuff. So, they probably wouldn't tell me that anyways. But they might tell me, more along the
That
consciousness
you know
studies.
what
But
that's
I really
suggesting though.
think
You know what
what's
that's
that?
suggesting is that they do know that knowledge, they just don't pass it on. They're being secretive animals.
There could be. But I think that they're on a different evolutionary path than we are. And I mean, I know there's other belief systems that believe we either progress or we digress back into animal form. And, that a rat, say, because I had this dilemma once with rats in my barn, and I was like, I can't poison an animal. That just to me is can't do that. And so I had this envision. Everybody's like, you can't let rats live in your barn. There's like for one that old saying, when you see one rat, there's like hundreds. And so I had this envision of all these poor rats and what to do about it. And I had a friend who was a Buddhist, and he was like, you can't let these rats take over. You wouldn't let a person come in, move into your house, and take over your house. And so you can't let a rat do that. And all the explanations why. So it's kind of funny because I really that particular person believed that that rat could have been another being who was on the way down as far as progression
No, I
goes.
see.
They were going backwards instead of
Oh,
forward.
nice.
So in other words, they were living totally in service to self and taking a very selfish outlook, and probably did some really horrific things in their life, and then they progressed backwards. Um, I don't really
So you were
necessarily
next seen
follow
out there
that.
with a shotgun, weren't you? Clearing
I
that
was
barn.
not. No, it was tough. It was like, what do we do about this situation, you know?
Hmm.
Um, yeah. But anyway, so I have never had an animal say anything that indicated that to me personally. But I
Then
have.
I'll take this on then, right from animals saying stuff profound to you.
Mhm.
It's kind of a slight segue here into the hospice work that I know you've done. Have any people on their deathbed said anything like lucid and profound then that would suggest to you there 100% is something there? You know what I mean? And or suggest to the layperson in the room that's not you.
Well, I've not had anyone say something profound out of what my belief system already is. So, to me, to you, it might be profound, or somebody,
Yeah.
not you, but you, whoever, it might be very profound. But normally, well, the times that I've been physically with somebody that passed, it before they lost their ability to speak, it would be that they have this connection with their loved ones. So they're seeing their loved ones. That's where everybody goes. They go to that point of, not everybody, but often you'll see them communicate with whoever was coming in to greet them. And so that right there is like more of a proof. I mean, the
Mm.
skeptic would say, well, their loved one was this or that, and so, but sometimes they'll see people they haven't seen in a long time. Like my mother, before she passed, was seeing someone from her childhood that ran the local store. I think she ended up working for him or something. So she saw him close to her, like, probably the day before. And I wasn't there to witness this. My father told me about it. And she was talking to this gentleman who ran this store. And was it a memory? He said it really didn't seem like it. She was very lucid at that moment, and she was seeing him there. And she said, "Oh, and she's here, and he's here." And so she's talking like they were standing right there. So, and I think so. What happens is, as the life force gets ready to leave the body, it it uh it moves from the extremities, from all the cells, because all your memory is in all the cells, your thoughts are in all the, your essence. And so your spirit gathers up, it gets ready to leave, it kind of gathers its energy. And as it does that, to get to take that push out, it creates in that person that awakened state where they actually can see both worlds, right? So they are seeing those people. They're not going to be thinking about some mathematical save the world stuff. They're going to be thinking about what most of us will be thinking about, was who's here to greet me, who's coming in, what beings show up to that I'm connected to, because those connections stay, our ancestors stay through many, many, many lives. Those connections stay, and that's what shows up.
It's
Yeah.
interesting that that shopkeeper then was seen. Because what
Mm,
does that suggest? That he was just a kind guy and therefore was in the memory and was looked upon
right.
nicely, or was he something extra special? I don't know.
Yeah, I think both. I think he probably was an authoritative figure to her because she worked for him. And she really liked him. He was a nice guy. He was nice to everybody in the neighborhood, and a real nice person. And sometimes I don't know, we play different roles and in our life. And so the role I'm in now, I'm mother to my daughter. But in another lifetime, she was mother to me. I was her daughter.
Who's the
And so
best mum of you two?
probably her. Probably she, in this life, she kind of thinks she's the mother sometimes. So she have to
Newborns, eh? Yeah.
I have to remind her, in this
Yeah.
lifetime, I'm the mother, you know.
That's it.
But
Get back into your room.
when I'm doing, yeah, when I'm doing readings for people, they're always amazed, and I'm amazed sometimes who shows up. Sometimes somebody will show up that they long forgot about, a childhood friend, and we'll give them a message, that's very validating for them. And sometimes they don't know that they've passed, but other times I'll say, I've got somebody here, blah, blah, blah. And I explain, I give them who it is, how they passed. Oh my gosh, that's a neighbor I knew. That's a neighbor I knew who was good friends with my mother, and she was at my house all the time. And that woman was seen to that person as a mother figure, came in, and often that would be like a prelude to the mother coming in. So it's kind of interesting the way it goes. You just never know who's going to show up. I've had, um, for the most part, the people that show up in readings have uh, a relationship of some sorts, or a relationship to what the message is that that person needs for their healing that day. It's exactly what they needed to hear. And I have no clue who these people are. So it's not like I know what they need. I don't. And I don't even look at people pretty much when I'm reading, because I'll close my eyes, or I'll look off on this to the side, because I'm looking with my third eye and I'm sensing over here, and my guide's behind me and may come in with some things. But there's just a whole big thing that's going on. I'm communicating with their guide, which is where they are, but there's just so much going on with that. Um,
Okay. So
yeah.
back to like the hospice work, right?
Mm.
A while ago, I spoke to Lisa Smart. I don't know if you know of her. She did the
Mm.
Final Words project, which is about people in that like lucid state or the altered state before they pass on and what they said. Have
Hmm.
you got any stories where people have said some sort of strange things that you thought, oh, that's cool?
You know, no, I would say, because again, that a lot of them didn't know who I am truly as a medium and all that, but they did have an inclination that I was a healer, because I would often come in as a Reiki practitioner. And so I was easing pain. If they were in pain, I was easing the energy out. Um, that I also sometimes they would get like a boost from my energy. So it was they like I had one woman, she had a brain cancer, and so her brain was working a little bit different in right before.
Hmm.
um so but her husband would tell me every time that I gave her Reiki, she the it shouldn't say it's my energy, it's the Reiki energy, um gave her a boost of energy where she was a little more lucid in thought, so she could talk to him a little more carefully and more loving. It was like that, uh if they were still in like an anger kind of or resentment stage, that kind of dissipated a little bit. And I
Hmm.
really think that's because I think that's the Reiki energy, or any direct spiritual healing, any energy that's coming in that's love, especially when it's from an outsider. it it's not entangled with who that person is and the dynamics of the person, the relationship of the person given the love, because we always hurt the ones we love the most, right? So,
Unfortunately, it seems that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. It's true. So we're sharp tongued sometimes, where we would never talk to a stranger that way, but we talk to our own spouse that way or something. Or we can. Um, and I think so when that energy is a little more pure coming in, and there's no judgment there, there's no prejudging from the recipient, um, it allows that boost of energy. And that boost of energy brings them usually to a conscious state of this loving presence. And so the things that I've seen is a lot of, and I wasn't in hospice a long, long time. It was only a few years. So the ones that I saw were more, in my own family, was more of a peacefulness that comes over them, an acceptance and a peacefulness. And the profound statements would be more about, I wish, or I wish I had handled this differently. I wish I had handled that differently. I see things like that. They might confide in me that something about their um, daughter or son, and that they just didn't do this enough. And I would say, just, you know, talk to them. It's not too late. Talk to them. That kind of stuff is what I would see more. But more it was as they got really close to passing. it was more of seeing everything around them and trying to, you can see them looking like they're trying to figure out what they're seeing. And I think they're seeing the next realm, that it's just the veil has peeled back and they're getting ready to go, and they're seeing often sometimes um, information that they can't put into words.
Hmm.
So, I, but like I said, I was only in hospice for a short period of time, a few years. So I haven't sat with that many people passing like someone like a nurse that sees it every day, all the time.
Sure, sure.
I'd be
Yeah.
coming in once a week or once every 2 weeks and that kind of thing.
Oh, fair enough. You mentioned Reiki healing there.
Mm.
What is the energy that comes through? You said it's like a love energy, but if beings are energy,
Hmm.
excuse the naive question here, is that energy coming through a sacrificed energy being? Do you know what I mean? Is it a blank energy? What is it?
Well, it is the essence of the one. I look at it as infinite intelligence. I look at it that we're in the mind of we're in the mind of God, of source. And from that source is an endless supply of energy. It's infinite. It's infinite intelligence. And so energy breaks from infinite intelligence and incarnates in all sorts of ways. It can be a thought form. It can be an entity without a soul. It can be an entity with a soul. And that gets into another whole area that
Yeah,
is too big to get into.
another big
But
topic. Yeah, we'll leave that one.
yeah, there's no depletion of energy. It changes form. It doesn't deplete. So it's always there. It's always the one is there. And it's our frequency who separated from the one. And so a spirit guide well, I'll say my spirit guide is
Hmm.
still very much connected with the one, but will use like that bilocation, that lower incarnation, that bilocation to form into a more, it's not material, but it's more of a frequency that I can reach, right, in order to communicate. That's why in the old ancient writings, lots of times you'll see like an angel appeared and I fell to my knees kind of thing. And you do, like people think I'm seeing angels, this and that. We're too easy and quick, or too quick to identify things that we're not really sure what they are. And unfortunately, lots of times we don't know what that being is, but if we've practiced enough, we know the feel of that being. Like you can be fooled by a lower level energy, which is something in the astral plane, a being in the astral plane that might, let's have some fun with this medium and tell her she's talking to Jesus or whatever. And they'll come in and appear that way and do this. But if you know the feel of energy, if you've been practicing this, you can't be fooled as much. If you're used to what is a higher frequency and what is a lower frequency. But all of us have been fooled at one time or another. So that's why it's always important to test the spirits and all that. But I mean, getting back to depletion of energy and healing, sorry, see, I get off and I'm like, "Ew." Um,
We need like a big bat, a
you
fly
too,
swatter. I mean,
you
not a.
too. Every time I get on and make a video, the big joke is I'll say, I'm on making a quick video, and my quick videos turn into 20 minutes, and then I'm like,
Three
because
hours
just
later, yeah.
ADH brain.
All right, so look, I'm going to hit you with the fly swatter. So the
Yeah.
energy that isn't a being coming through, that is just juice or a charge. Is that what it is?
The life force energy, which actually is inside of all of us. That's that latent energy that's inside of us that if you work, I'll throw the word Kundalini out there. It's the Kundalini, it's the life force, it's the Shakti, it's the life force energy that is latent in the lower centers, the root and the sacral center. And that energy that we use to learn how to let it flow. We don't see we get in the way of it. We get in the way of the endless supply from infinite intelligence and the endless supply that's actually inside of us, which if we learn how to work this energy or how to release it, how to work through our energy centers and open those doorways, it's letting that alive, powerful being to be present in every moment that we speak. And it's what causes us to be creative, you know. Sometimes we think, oh, this idea came to us, and where did it come from? Oh, I'm a genius. This great idea came, out of thin air. No, it didn't come out of thin air. It came from the collective consciousness. It came from the energy that's all around you, but also the energy within you. And so it came in. What are you going to do with it? If you merge it with the frequencies that are inside you, the divine feminine, the divine masculine, and you merge those energies and use them to create and raise your frequency to create, you're actually bringing energy from the lower centers into the higher centers, your heart or through your mind. And even if you bring your energy all the way up and you try to function from the crown center, you got to bring it back down to the heart when you're in the earth, because you got to function in the earth. You can't, I mean, you could go off on your own and function from the higher realms and have some wonderful trips that are, fantastical. But what's the point of being here right now in this divine being that we are, and we're learning how to manifest and use energy and understand energy to become more than, and to become ourselves is really what it is. It's just a remembering, because we already are this beautiful divine spark, but we are not with our source. And all of what we talk about is just different aspects of living and understanding that source is real. Oh, communication is real. It matters what I do in this lifetime. And it matters how I act and how I treat people and what my function is. And if I can understand that my function is to create from love, and it sounds hokey, but it isn't. It's just beautiful. It's beautiful when you can come from your heart center. And the way to do that is service to self or service to others. You can go down the service to self pathway, but sooner or later, you're not going to make it back to source. Your energy is not going to return to 0 point, because you are in a egotistical, selfish energy manner. If you're serving others not because you think you're going to get rewarded, but you're serving others because that is where your heart calls you. That's where love calls you to do. When you go down those routes, you gain even more energy. There's an endless supply of energy within and without is what you project. So
Okay, so I know
it's
I know you've mentioned energy within, and that I get all that. But
mhm.
the energy, how are you getting as part of the Reiki? I'm just trying to understand, how do you get it from A and put it into B, meaning the
Okay.
person, and what's
So
going on?
Okay, so Reiki's a little different, where we're working with Reiki guides. We're working with the intelligence behind the energy. And in Reiki, there are symbols used that are a certain frequency. And those symbols bring in that energy. It's almost like you're a conduit, if you will. You can imagine it coming in through the crown center, down through your heart, and out through your hands. And so
Okay.
that's how you're healing. And Reiki is really an off the body energy um, modality. So the energy's coming out of the palm of your hands, it's being directed through and out. The symbols that we use in Reiki are to the different frequencies, which are some of it's for emotional healing, some of it's for physical, some of it's distant healing. You can do distant healing on people and animals and places and things. So it's directing that intelligent energy in the pathway of Reiki and how it was discovered or rediscovered by, I'm a Usui Reiki master, so I'm using Dr. Usui's methods. He was a Buddhist monk who discovered this, and or rediscovered it, because I personally think it's all from the collective. I don't think one type of um, energy used, so-called labeled by humans, is better than any other kind. What's better is your not better. What's clearer channel is your frequency. Because you can be using different forms of Reiki from different Reiki masters that were brought through and be taught a certain way. And if you're not living as a channel for healing, trying to improve yourself and your energy centers and your shadow side and being the best you can, if you're not living with those intentions daily, you're living in the muck and mire and you're maybe not responding very, and then you once a week go over and say, I'm a Reiki master and I'm going to move my energy here and it's going to channel. Your channel's not very clear, might not be as clear as someone who's living in love 24/7 or as close as they can. If you're living in alignment with source as much as you can, then that love shines through no matter what you do, and you're a clear channel. So
So you're
that
channeling
energy,
this energy.
you're channeling the energy,
Where is
right?
it? What's it physically doing in the body and the mind? What's going on?
Well, as the person, what I'm doing is bringing higher frequency into this denser energy. And what's going on in my mind, because I work a little differently, I combined different healing methods. Um, so what's going on in my mind is all I do is project seeing that person completely whole and
Okay.
completely healed. I'm seeing that person smiling. I'm seeing them happy. I'm seeing them whole. And that's the only thing I'm doing with my mind. Um, when I'm doing Reiki, I might use a symbol or two. If I catch myself wandering, which does happen sometimes, your mind starts wandering a little, I go back. But as a medium, I incorporate that in my healing work. So I work a little differently. So I open to communication with my guide, filtering, so that if this person needs to hear something so their mother might come in and they had issues with their mother that they didn't work out, and it's manifesting in their physical body, in their stomach region. They're having all sorts of problems with their stomach because they have unresolved issues with their mother passed, blah 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 blah. This is just an example.
Hmm.
So my guide will come in, and they're because it's a healing session and I've already set the intention, and so have they. I make it clear when I work with a person that, I'm a medium, so I'm going to bring this. Is it all right if we do that? If it happens, and I allow it because I've set the intention that her guides or his guides will bring in for their highest and best healing for this session, you know? So it's very specific for me that they receive what they need, not what they want. Okay, so they're not going to get a message like they might get if I was doing just straight mediumship. Um, they're getting something to do with healing, right? So the mother might come in and say something to do with that healing. And they might talk about a specific situation, but usually it isn't even that. It's more the larger picture of what the uh, conflict was. And also quite often, I mean, there's not a lot of that. It's more the guides will come in and talk to them. Um, and of course, unfortunately, a guide is not a verifiable, you can't verify a guide with the person. You can you can tell them what you're getting for their guide, what you're seeing, and they can verify it. Oh, that's just my guide. I already know that being. But I'm very careful with that because I have a personal thing with people should do the work to figure out who their guide is. I shouldn't tell somebody who their guide is. I don't feel comfortable doing that because what if I'm wrong? What if I'm
Mm.
perceiving it incorrectly? And then that person leaves my office and then goes off and they're talking to their guide, Larry over here, Larry this, Larry that. It's not even their guide, and they're off on a different thing that's not even accurate. So knowing that mediumship is not 100% accurate because of the frequency shifts, you know. But incorporating that, getting back to Reiki, it is a focused, Reiki is a focused energy based on that system. So it's a system of symbols, of frequencies, and it's trusting the intelligence to do the work. So I'm the conduit for the energy, but I'm not the one healing the person. I'm not placing my hand, I'm using intuition or guidance from my Reiki guide to maybe place my hand a little extra over an ankle that has an old injury. I might ask the person, because I'm picking up on that, did you have an injury on your right ankle? Yay, why, yes, I did. I broke it years ago and da da da. So I say, okay, and I'm just spend extra time sending energy to that to let go of the energy that holds it. I may receive information of what that ankle energy was all about. Had nothing to do with the fact that they stepped wrong and twisted their ankle and broke it. It has everything to do with a emotional or mental state that they were in before that happened. And so if we can find why that happened prior to the injury, what happened 48 hours or 72 hours before the injury, we can usually release that energy more. So,
So that's what's happening inside of you as a healer. What
mm.
happens inside the person getting
Well,
healed?
that's really interesting because they'll have their eyes closed and you know, I'll just tell you one of the emotional things, because this happens emotionally a lot. Um, is that I'll be working on someone and I'll come down to like the from the heart center or the solar plexus in that area, and then the spleen sacral. So I'll be in the body and I'll be like 6 inches above the body with my hands,
Hmm.
sending energy. And then all of a sudden I'll look and I'll see the person start crying. And, I'll usually give them a minute and then I will ask them, um, if you want to share what you're experiencing, please do. What are you thinking? What's releasing? And they will tell me something I already know, but it's such a sensitive subject, I would never bring it up first. And that is, I know they had a miscarriage. And I will pick that up as I'm in that section, and I will spend some more time working about the energy that is stuck, the grief that's stuck will show up in the spleen sacral, but then it will bounce up to the heart center. So they're stuck in their heart because they're still grieving this miscarriage. And miscarriages are tough because general public does not look at it the same way as the people going through it, and especially the mother, because and the father too, but the mother that has that physical electrical connection with a baby, with a fetus. So oftentimes that will come up in a lot of healing sections at sessions. And so the person will tell me that well, I had a miscarriage and for some reason I'm just thinking of it. I don't know why. And then I'll tell them, well, that's because I'm in that area. If you notice or you feel it, that's where the heat is. And there's a lot of energy being sent to help you move through that even more. And so then they might tell me their story and I'll just let them talk. And that, of course, releases a lot just talking about it. And a lot of these people can't talk to anybody about that because after a miscarriage, often their partners will tend to move on a little faster than they will. And that's because they didn't experience that full connection with that spirit that was getting ready to come in. And that spirit was hovering above that body and hanging out with the mother for, months before. And so there's a lot to it. But that's one extreme. But that's what happens. As I'm working on body parts, the person will say, I don't know why. I was feeling kind of sad, but all of a sudden I'm feeling really happy. Or all of a sudden, lots of times they will get emotional. That's usually what happens is more emotions. Yeah.
Okay, and I think then that is a perfect time for us to move into
Hmm.
the Koit zone.
Koit Zone!
So, Laurie, in the Koit zone, I'm going to ask you some strange questions. More so than
Okay.
the strange questions I've already asked you. So
Yeah. I'm in the
let's.
hot seat now.
You
Oh
are.
boy.
There's points on offer, and remember, points can come off. So just be very careful. I'm only
Behave
joking.
myself.
Yeah,
Okay.
behave. And what is your favorite band or artist musically?
Oh boy. Woo. Overall, I would say YouTube is my
Oh, I.
favorite band, but I do listen to a lot of uh, electronic music, and it's vibrational, especially when I'm painting, when I'm channeling and painting. I listen to a lot of that electronic.
Have you been to see U2 in concert?
I have. My daughter paid for it. She treated us
That's nice.
because because I don't like big crowds, and she said, but they were at Foxborough, and so she treated my husband and I to tickets for them. Yep. So I
Fair
saw
play.
him
So at least you
once.
got to see
Yeah.
him. That's good. That's the main thing.
Yes.
Do you have a prized possession?
That's funny. The first thing that came to my mind was my husband.
I knew you were going to say that. I have
Yeah,
a
he's my
knowing.
prize. 46 years, prize possession.
You're mine. Yeah.
No, I don't. As far as like material things, I don't. I don't think I have a pri. There's probably one painting that I love. It's not very good. It's when I first started painting, and it's of my guide. And the energy of his essence is in that painting, so that's probably my prized possession.
I have to say something right now, right? You've
Sure.
said the word essence 5 or 6 times on this podcast, right? And every time a guest of mine says the word essence, I always want to do this. So I'm going to do this just for my girlfriend. Essence, right? And I don't know if you know what that's from.
No.
That's from what is it? The Dark Crystal. Do you remember that old
No.
film with
No, I
Jim Henson
don't.
film? It's like a Muppetsy sort of film.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. I
They
remember
collect
that
the
now.
essence of the
Yes.
gelflings. Essence.
Yes.
I always want to say that. Every time you said it
That's
today, I
funny.
wanted to
I
jump in
had
with it.
I had long forgotten that.
Essence. Sorry, I had to bring that up. Tiff, that's for you, that one. Um, what food stuff can you easily binge loads of,
Oh,
i.e. like Pringles or whatever?
bagels. Bagels and pizza. Those are my two favorites.
And once you
Yeah.
pop, you just can't stop on those.
Oh my God, I can't stop until the pizza's done. It's
Like a
can't
50 inch,
stop.
yeah? Rah, rah, rah.
I probably would pretty much down that whole thing and
Hmm.
regret it instantly. But yeah, pizza and bagels, my favorites.
Very, very bready, isn't it? That's gonna
Yes, and
bog you
that's what I
right
try to,
up.
and that you can tell I'm depriving myself of carbs because I'm still craving those things.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm a carb person. Yep,
See,
yep.
I've just cut all carbs out. I've gone back carnivore again for a few months to
Have you?
clean me out.
I
Yeah,
that
it's
yeah,
hard.
I'm doing keto right now, and I go back and forth, but I it's really hard. And once I get in it, about a week in, I get in it in 3 days, and then I do really well, and then I don't. Then it's like all it takes is my husband saying, "Let's go out to breakfast." Okay. And
And
then
therein
it's like
lies the
I'm all
problem.
right. I'm just gonna have eggs, but I go in there and I see the cinnamon French toast and I blow it, and then that
Yeah.
is the down spiral of the carb
And then you have your
situation.
bagels, and then you have your pizza. Yeah, I know how
Yep,
this works.
exactly. Yep, yep.
Can you swim?
Yes, not very good, but yes.
Cool. Just a
Yep.
throwaway question. What is your best achievement?
Well, this sounds kind of corny, but I think it was an achievement to me was having my daughter going through with, having I don't mean going through with, I mean um that
Yes, you
didn't
won't like
sound
that.
right. Yeah. Raising that punk is what I
Yeah.
No, that was an achievement to me because I was afraid. I had a lot of fear about having a child, like childbirth. And I mean, I know now that I probably died in a past life in given childbirth. Um, but I had a big fear about that. I had a big fear about raising her, doing the wrong thing, not being a very good mother. I wanted to be as good as my mother was, that kind of thing. So that was an achievement to me to do a good job, to pay attention. And I think and there's no ego in this when I say I did a fabulous job because my
No, well
daughter and I
played.
are really good friends, and we still got that mother-daughter thing that shows up once in a while that you always have. But um, yeah, and then the other accomplishment in life is going from having a very closed off heart, not liking people, to understanding people, to actually loving people. And that's quite the accomplishment if you knew me 40, 50, 60 years ago.
I know
Yeah,
that path, by the way.
yeah,
Yes, I know
yeah,
that path. Um,
yeah.
where in the world calls to you?
Um, Now, if you had asked me that a few years ago, I would say Ireland, because all my life Ireland has called to me. It's the only place that really calls to me on the earth plane. But now it's outside of the earth plane with everything I've
Oh, I.
experienced.
You want to go
It's
home?
home.
Yeah.
Yeah, home. I don't want to go home just yet. I want to hang around here a little bit
Mm.
longer, but home, 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 the universe, energy, the love, pure positive love. That calls me.
The Irish are not going to like hearing this because they they wanted to be number one and they've
Of
been
course they
relegated.
do. And
Yeah.
they're close. They're close. So.
Do you have a favorite meat?
Well, it's funny. I hadn't eaten meat in 33 years. Steak was
Oh
always
wow.
my favorite. And I was a vegetarian for a while. And of course, and I went through all being very sick for a long period of time, off and on. And actually, before I had a um experience of a divine experience of an opening, shall we say, of energy in a way that I have never experienced before. Prior to that, a few weeks, my guide said to me, "You need to eat red meat and you need it in your system, and we need you to have that." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? I haven't had 33 years, right?" And I couldn't even walk in the store. Like I would never cook meat. I would never, it was like I couldn't walk by the meat department. It would just repel me. And I would just think of the animals and it would just bother me so much. To They took away this diversion I had. They took it away overnight. It was like I had this belief system, understanding. Overnight, I walked in, bought a filet mignon, cooked it, and was like, oh my God, I have 30. Like, I don't think I did myself any favors because I think
I
there was some,
wasted 33 years. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. It was like, come on, maybe I should have thought that through a little bit, but I had that mindset of, I'm doing my small part to save animal, so it wasn't
No, I
a
get it.
balanced
Yeah.
it wasn't a balanced way of thinking. And so now I will tell you, filet mignon is that absolutely my favorite. Yeah,
No,
that's
cool.
my favorite.
What about
Yeah.
the smell of bacon? That's better though, isn't it?
That smells good. Yes, bacon does smell good. Yeah.
It's
I still
high end
can't really.
smell.
Yeah, it is. It is. And it's, I love my vegetables, but I do love filet.
What is the
Sorry.
worst? No, don't be sorry. Never be sorry. What is the worst injury you've sustained?
Um, I would say the worst injury. Hmm. I kind of look at cancer as being an injury.
Hmm.
It was injuries from the treatment of cancer, and that's what I'll say is the worst. And I'll leave it
Oh,
at that
yeah, no,
and
that's
move
fair
on.
enough. Yeah, not good.
Yeah.
What is the best cartoon character ever created, you think?
I like Bugs Bunny and I like Pluto.
Oh, I.
Yeah, those are the two that I like. Yeah.
Bugs Bunny. He sort of like sounds like he's from your sort of area, doesn't he? That sort of
Yeah, he probably
zone.
is. I like Bugs Bunny because I like the whole "What's up, Doc" thing, and I like his attitude. He always had
Yeah,
this little attitude and very like I was like not uh what's the word I'm looking for? Bugs Bunny puts this power out, like nothing bothers him. What's up, Doc?
confidence. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, confidence. Thank you. That's old
Did you
lady
know? I
brain.
don't know if you're aware of this, but he's been going through a hard time lately, Bugs Bunny.
No.
He's actually gone back to eating meat. He's on the steak as well now. Yeah,
Really?
yeah. You can see him in the car. He's eating them. Yeah, it's weird. That's
Jeez.
Bugs for you. Um, Last question in the Koit zone. What is the most amount of money you've ever found?
I ever found?
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever found money.
You've got
Yeah.
to have found money.
Yeah, I have found, but it would have been probably change. I don't really
Yeah, that's
remember
cool.
ever finding cash. I did find a wallet once, brought it to the police department because, back then in a little town, you just bring it to the police and sooner or
Obviously, you
later
took
they.
out $100 from that.
No, I didn't
Obviously.
take any cash. I didn't take anything. But no, I think finding money on the ground, I just don't think of money that much. So I can't really remember. Maybe a quarter. I might have I don't know. I really don't know. Probably
You
a
know,
quarter.
earlier I said to you
That
that you
is a
could.
random question.
It is, but it's kind of not for me. But is the thing, right? You know, I said earlier you can win points and lose points.
Yeah, yeah.
I think you've lost 12 points on that one, so that takes you right back down to 0.
Zero, it figures.
That is a low amount to find in your life, you know, or just a
Yeah,
quarter.
I don't think I found, I mean, I really don't. I don't remember ever finding bills like in the, I've lost bills. In fact, I lost a $20 bill going into a restaurant and I ordered my breakfast and then I had no money to pay it. And I was like, yeah, and it was a breakfast place that I used to go to all the time. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't have my money. And I'm like, I had $20 in my pocket and I'm really bad with money. I stuff money in my pocket and I take out something and it falls out. I don't notice. I'm so bad with money. And there was a guy sitting up on the stool having his breakfast, and he was like, how much did you lose? I said, $20 bill. I had a $20 bill in my pocket. And I know it was in my pocket when I left the house. And he reaches in his pocket. He goes, he's this crumpled up $20 bill, which came out of my pocket. He said, I found this out in the parking lot. So he gave it back to me. So then I bought him breakfast. He's like, you don't have to do that. And I said, no, this was great. This was a lot of fun. So it was kind of an interesting thing. So I lost 20, but I got it right back within the hour. So
Yeah.
what does that say about law of
I
attraction? I don't
what
know.
I don't know what it says about that, but it also says this: you're not getting that 12 points back. I'm afraid you've still lost the 12
Right.
points. All right, that is the end
Darn.
of the Koit zone. So thank you for that. I want to ask you one more thing before we wrap
Sure.
up, which is I'd be remiss of me if I didn't ask about the spirit artistry work behind you. So can you
Oh.
just briefly go into
I don't
what
know if
that
I can
is?
briefly tell you, but as
You
briefly
have
as
to, else you
possible.
could go into negative points.
Okay. Briefly is I started painting a few years ago. I did paint, dabbled a little over, years and years ago, but that would be like one painting every 5 years kind of thing. And when I retired, sort of retired, I started painting and with my guide. My guide came in and then I went into a light trance and started painting in light trance. So all the work I do now is brought in, it's blended with my guide's energy into a light trance and we bring it through. And if you go on my website and you'll
Hmm.
see, there's a plug on my website. Um, You'll see an art page that has all the arts. And I had my first art show with my daughter because she's an established artist. And I'm a beginner artist, but we had a show together in New Hampshire. And you'll see a picture of that up there. And, she was one of my biggest uh, fans, like really encouraged me to paint no matter what. And as my guide says, paint like a child, just freely paint, create. And when you use that creative energy, that's another way of elevating your energy. Use that life force energy to create. And those people will feel the vibrations coming off of it. Whoever's meant to see it will see it. And a lot of the symbols, these are from the Arcturians, and those are imprints. So when somebody looks upon it, if it resonates with them, it's an imprint of energy, of cosmic energy. And so, it basically comes down to love, but there's a lot more to it, but I can't explain it quickly.
No, that's
So,
okay. I'm glad you at least said that because I was going to ask you a question. Why? Why is there a merging to create? But I now
right.
you've just literally said it. It's to
Yeah.
send a message
Yeah.
to the people that need to see it.
It is, and it's to uplift the planet. It's to uplift the frequency for this shift that's happening right now. So that's one way of doing it.
And I'm
It's
interested in that because I'm a creative myself. I do music and animations and
Mhm.
all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm always interested on where it comes from, why, purposes behind things, you know? I always
Yeah.
have, I need to know why on everything. But there we go.
Yeah, me too.
Look, yeah, it's good, isn't it? Laurie, thank you ever so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you
Thank
very much for
you.
coming. No, that's cool. Thank you. I will say to everyone again, check that links in the description. Go and see Laurie's website. You can see all the services she offers, and then indeed check out all the spirit artistry, etc. While you are there, Laurie, thank you ever so much for coming on.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
To watch other KoitCast episodes, please click the image top left. To subscribe to my channel, please click the image top right. Please like and share to help KoitCast grow, and most importantly of all, please click the notification bell so you never miss an upload.